And yeah, we have a lot to discuss with a big panel today. So the main topic that we would like to cover is challenges that we are facing in PEB design. We have discussed on this topic a few minutes back also, but we have just touched that. We can discuss that more in detail. Starting with architectural point of view, when we are dealing with PEBs, what are the challenges that architects face? Some of the challenges we discussed was regarding educational level, or architects do not have knowledge of steel. They are not taught those steel. So yes, we need to address that by way of upgradation courses or something like that. What is your take on that, Vinayak and Mr. Manish, both of you?
Thanks. Yeah, we were one of the, I think, earliest users and proponents of the PEB industry. I mean, initially, of course, we were also hesitant when it came into India. Once we got convinced, to convince our clients was a task in those days. Why PEB? What is, if there is an issue in fabrication, how will it be corrected, and all those issues were there. But since then, it's been a long journey. The industry has matured. But sometimes I feel it's a victim of its own success because it has become too big, it's too popular, and so many vendors have come in. And I mean, I cannot paint the entire industry with one brush, but there are gaps in designs. In the sales executives who basically are the representatives of the PEB industry who come for the jobs, some of them are not well versed, and there's a gap between what we want and what is quoted by them. So even if we have a technical negotiation and bring down those gaps, still those remain, so which needs to be addressed. This is from the design point of view.
So thanks. So most of the points which I was going to talk are already covered by him and in the earlier sessions. What I would like to say over here is when you talk about concrete, it's being extremely versatile. And there have been a lot of precedents that have already been set in concrete. We have very fluidic forms in concrete. However, when it comes to steel, there is a lot of limitation in terms of the architect's understanding of the product per se. More important is there is a general lack of understanding within the pre-engineered building sector on anything which is non-conventional. So, for example, if I have a very dynamic looking building which is supposed to be done in a pre-engineered form or in a steel structure, we get very lukewarm response from the suppliers of this industry. Our second biggest challenge, I'm not sure whether that was touch based in yesterday's session, was the knowledge which the statutory authorities also have on this particular account. For example, if I go to the fire officer and we talk about structural steel or steel buildings, the first question which comes to the mind is the fire isolation. Of course, we have different methods and techniques by which this could be mitigated, but the general aversion is no. In one of our projects, we had a very beautiful staircase which was done in steel. And the fire officer, unfortunately, was not very conducive to the steel staircase, because he was saying that people have to go up and then they are coming down, the fire and the authority and the fire guys, in case of fire, you please encase it. So that's the general aversion within the industry. Yes. So not only the architects but also the authorities needs to be appraised of what we could do in structural steel. The apathy of this country is when we go abroad and we see structural steel buildings, we do not see those kind of structures getting done in India.
Right.
So if they can do, we can also probably do it, is what my personal feeling is.
So Vinayak, to add to your point that there is a lack of understanding or lack of acceptance on part of architects or on part of statutory authorities and all. There are questions amongst designers themselves I hope you agree with me. I'm one of the designers. There are questions among designers saying that whether we do this or we do this, or somebody is forcing me to do this, whether I should do it or not. Right? So what is your take on that?
Yeah. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, what has happened? Earlier, this pre-engineered building is a latest concept. Latest in the sense it is around 1.5 decades old in India. Earlier to that, our academics till date also, many of the academics what they are being taught in the institute, they are only for the conventional steel. Okay? So because of that, what has happened? The graduates, what we get from the engineering college, they need to be oriented towards this. See, initially when PEB was introduced in India, you must have seen that time whatever the type of the buildings executed, they are all say, typical box type. Till architects entered into this field. Now they are giving various shapes and sizes. Today, I am very proud to say that we are handling, we are no more in the small span with a typical box type. We are given various shapes and we are catered to the architectural or architects' ideas. Okay, it has been implemented also. We have got a lot of such buildings being executed in India. But the unfortunate thing is that we don't have a common forum or what I can say is that any magazines or the media to reach to each and everyone. This is what I wanted to say there. Today in engineering, especially PEB, we don't have any challenges. Okay? There are other challenges. Subsequently, I will take it up.
Right. So what I wanted to ask you probably is that suppose you get a project inquiry from an architect. Okay. Many times you are told that no, you have to design as per this only. You have to design as per this codal provisions only. Whereas you yourself know that this is not right. Right? So how do you handle those differences? How do you address those differences? This, I think, is the most common amongst all PEB or any steel building design that comes to a structural engineer.
Okay. See, I want to say one thing is that here, generations pass, but our codes never get revised.
Yes.
Okay, say like when I graduated, it was IS 800 1984. So when I started practicing and then I started my job, so almost I reached my middle of my career. What I found is that in 2007 we got an version that is almost say like 23 years.
23 years, yes.
23 years. By that time, half of our career is gone. So now what happened in that suddenly there is a shift from working stress to a limit state. Now to understand that, and there are no such seminars or nothing, you need to log in and you need to self-study. Okay, and the demand in the market is that now you have to produce very fast. Now what happened, it is entirely different concept. In that concept, so now how to proceed? So whatever we don't have, then this PEB concept came. Say in America, every 5 years or 6 years, okay, there, of course, here I want to just little deviate. They have got their own private organizations, okay. They actually formulate the codes and they get implemented. Here in India, we don't have such a unity. We always look forward to statutory implementation. That's what we are having delays. Now, in PEB, what has happened when it introduced in 98, 99, after that, we didn't have any code. Till date also, we don't have any dedicated code for the PEB. Now what happened? You need to follow certain guidelines. Now we have to fall back. We have got one general construction in steel. Please mind, this is general construction in steel. It is not meant for, say, a pre-engineered building or anything. So we refer to that IS 800 only. But when you go to the forward, what it says in that, it is meant for hot roll construction. Okay? But we have to use the same guidelines in PEB. Now what has happened? The code also says that whenever there are any details not covered in that, you can refer to other international codes. Now the thing comes into picture. Okay? Say for example, I am telling you, say there are two things. One is loading code, another is the design code. For loads, yes, we have got very beautiful codes like IS 875 and all. We take all the loads from these codes, but today what has happened, the practice is that there are other factors also, market factors and all. Now we are mixing the codes. So now look how exactly is happening. say we are taking the loads as per the limit state, but you are not designing as per limit state. We are referring to American codes where those codes, initially they were actually equivalent to our codes only. Now what has happened? They have gone for ultimate loads. We are mixing our service load with ultimate loads. The thing is that we are under designing the structures when you are actually mixing these codes. This cocktail is going to have a definite impact. Please mind, buildings are getting under design whenever people are adopting this mixing of codes. This is the biggest challenge today what we have.
So, Mr. Gore, your views on the specifications versus what we want to design?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you see in case of ski, seismic codes is another example, which is created confusion not only in PEB industry, but all industries actually overall. And the thing is that we seem to be inspired by American or Euro codes, but in America, they have gone to great lengths to explain this course, whereas we have tried to just cover it using one or two sections, and a lot of things are left to the interpretation by various people. I mean, you see American seismic course, for example, you have entire chapters dedicated to how you detail the connections. You have separate volumes for pre-qualified connections and all. We don't have anything in India. More practically, in the context of PEBs, what you see, we hardly have anything for design of crane beams, if you see. What are the different classifications of cranes, crane beams? As you mentioned, what is the fatigue resistance? What is the type of detailing? We have nothing. And what adds to the problem is that this is a very competitive industry. So what happens if the specifications are not very clear in the consultants' big documents? Everybody will tend to make it a very, very cost optimum solution, may not be the best solution from the project point of view. And this is something what my recommendation is that wherever our codes are not sufficient, we should definitely refer to the international course. But wherever we have our own course, like Indian course, I think it's not a good idea to mix the course. We should follow with our own course where we have it completely.
Right. Before we move on to further questions, any questions from audience, I would request you to send in a chat so that we can take simultaneously rather than waiting towards the end. Yeah. Next one, I would ask Tusharji. See, design has its own challenges. Okay. When we are designing, this was also referred in previous discussion. We have many site-related challenges. The designer need to understand site-related limitations and all. So, have you come across such problems or such situations where the designs are not catering to the site requirements, really speaking? The designer is designing in isolation, architect has visualized something else in isolation, and site is some third thing only. So, there are three different buildings getting designs, really speaking.
Yes, too. See, basically, I will go one step behind to your question. See, each project we have to treat as a unique.
Yes.
Okay. There is nothing common in two different projects. So, from a perspective of requirements, as well as design activities or all the construction schedules, all the stakeholder has to treat that project in absolutely as a unique in terms of everything.
Yes.
Okay. Then it will have a kind of a smooth selling during the whole activity, like right from designing to drawings to GA to fabrication and probably erection activities. Any step is missed out, we're going to definitely have a problem. Typically, what we find out is as an end client will thought of adding some mezzanines later.
Yes.
We'll go to VASUDEV, probably say, can you check those columns again and figure it out whether you can do or have additional columns. So again, it goes back to when you basically doing engineering, right, from the architecture or the requirement perspective, as you point out it from the code activity, whether it is catering to everything. Typical activity, what we feel is that all the loads of typical MEP activities they'll figure out, you know, no, I want this to be running somewhere here. It was not catered to. So you have to either figure out whether it can cater or add some strengthening activities. It's a typical, most of the projects we face. But if all the stakeholders align well before, definitely we will have everything, right? From quality production to sequencing, everything will go as we require. And it will also give results in terms of timely completion as well as per the requirement of quality needs are catered to.
Ankur, your views on that?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Yes, this is a very common problem that we do face practically almost on all projects, where either the client or the consultant is not really taking into consideration the final site issues.
Right.
Right. And a lot of times, I'll be a little candid here, a lot of times the consultants don't even actually go to the site when it's being installed and being executed, right? The sites could be so far away, a consultant could be sitting either in Bombay or Delhi. The site could be very far away in north of India, east of India, and it will not be possible for him to actually be there or his team to be there at the time. So I'll quote an example. In a lot of tenders, we are sometimes, people insist that we should go for pin-based designs.
Okay.
Right? Even the gable columns or the wind columns, they insist should be kept as pin-based. So for the benefit of audience, a pin-based column will be slender at the bottom. I'm just trying to simplify it without going to details. Whereas a fixed base column will be slightly wider at the column, at the base, sorry. So now, when you design a building on a model and you have the whole 3D done, whether it's fixed base or pin based, you can easily make it very safe, a safe design on the software. Because that's the whole thing, you've taken care of all the loads and you've analyzing the whole thing together.
Right.
Now, if you analyze just the pin-based columns individually, they will fail.
Exactly. This is what precisely I think I was saying in a previous panel discussion, if you have heard, that structural designer, when he is designing it, he is hitting in air only. He knows nothing. Who is going to fabricate it, who is going to erect it, what is his level of knowledge, whether he will do it rightly or not.
Correct.
He knows nothing about it.
And nowadays, most of the buildings' heights have gone up to 12, 14, 15, 18 meters.
Yeah.
You cannot have a pin-based column or a row of 50, 30 columns, pin-based columns being installed. And they have absolutely no lateral stability of their own unless it becomes a complete structure. Now, this for a structure of, say, 500 tons or 1,000 tons could take 2 or 3 months to get installed completely. Right. Till that time, it has no stability. Right. But we have been insisted upon to design it as pin-based. And even the consultants would, in a way, convince the client that pin-based is lighter, your foundations are going to get lighter. So I'm just quoting one of the examples, how a designer is not taking into account what happens at site and what could happen at site when, you know, during those 3 months, the building is subject to so many weather conditions, storms, other impacts, loads, etc. So this is one example where this conflict does happen. I think it is very important for the designers to get involved in the execution part a little bit more and start understanding finally how it's to be executed. It is कुछ सिर्फ building design नहीं करनी है, उसको बना के install भी करना है.
At the end of the day, building has to stand.
It is not just a theoretical activity to be done.
So, would you say that similar things should be given to architects as a feedback that, sir, please don't do this. If you do this, we all are in trouble.
Yeah, so we are in constant consultations and discussions with architects and consultants on all projects. But sometimes as manufacturers or as sellers, when we give a feedback, it is taken as if, you know, out of our vested interest, we have a special benefit and therefore, or they consider maybe there's a limitation. They don't understand that for us, making ping-based or fixed-based, there's no limitation as such, right? Yeah. But we understand what goes into finally the final product. We understand right from the design concept to the final execution. Correct. So I think designers need to get involved at a larger scale.
Yes.
So, yeah, so just to take his point on the next note, by the time you come on the board, a lot of water has already passed below the bridge, and yes, when we approach the client again and tell him about these particular things, there is a general lack of awareness in what the client's thought process is. most of the times what we face is they go to some contractor or other installations, and they see very sleek columns that are being designed. And then the question comes to us that in one of the projects they have seen a very thin column, then why can't we do that? Not necessary that all structural consultants, and don't take me in the wrong context, but not necessary that all the structural consultants are well versed with steel design. We have to rely with specialists like Amit then and get his feedback on certain projects, and then approach the client that this is a particular thing which is practically possible or not possible. So rather than having these discussions in air-conditioned offices, you should go to the architects' offices and advise them on the entire engineering design that goes within the steel buildings.
Sir, you're asking us to play
Vinayak,
with danger, going to the
I
architect's
have a
office
solution
and
to that.
trying to teach them.
Please, initially in few projects, maybe you involve structural engineer right at the conceptual stage. They'll tell you, don't do this. This will not work. Don't do this. Or once you do 4 or 5 projects, or once, I mean, you know, at least I know that you know it. So once you have done 5 or 10 projects, you know that this will not work.
Correct,
Yeah.
Amit. So I know.
Right.
But
So like
there
that,
are 100 architects.
that holds good for any architect. Initially, you may not be knowing details of structural engineering. All right, that's never expected from you either. So you involve structural engineers right from the beginning when you are making your first plans, and tell them, sir, is it okay or not? If I am giving column locations here, is it okay or not? Will that give me a good economical design or not? Involve them and take their feedback. Once you involve them in 5 or 10 projects, you yourself will know this is better, this is not better.
So another point was which Mr. Gore was expressing that as far as possible follow the Indian codes, and we should not mix the codes. Again, this is a very it's a statement which needs to be followed in a strict sense. We also like to use only single code, but whenever there is no codal reference that is being followed, or there is, as a precedent, we have to follow the combination. The question over here is the certificates which we have to submit to the authorities. Probably, I would request the structural fraternity and the pre-engineered building fraternity over here to conduct orientation programs to those guys also in each and every state, and make them aware of the lacunas of our own codes. Not necessary that they are, that the structure would fall, but with those modifications, these are the possibilities that needs to be done.
Yeah, or more accurately, to be precise, we should be able to tell them that, look, sir, this building is designed for so-and-so loads with so-and-so design parameters. And it is good to withstand that. If those parameters are violated, or if those loads are violated, the building is not safe. Nobody can guarantee that. Structural engineer, as I told you, would have hardly seen that building during construction or during manufacturing. You and structural engineers have to write a stability certificate unconditionally, that come whatever is the load, whatever is the weather conditions, whatever is design conditions, the structure must stay. Yeah, or however it is installed. I mean, during installation, if it fails, it is still structural engineer's responsibility. I don't understand this kind of thing. So yes, I agree to Vinayak's viewpoint that this needs to be clarified to the legal authorities. Sir, 25 years back or 30 years back, that was a concept. I understand that structural engineer was supervising 100% of the work. Today, that's not a scenario. It's getting manufactured in factories, it's getting installed under some circumstances, you never know. So,
but here I want to differ, I beg to differ. See what is happening, see initially how it actually goes, there is a process. When architects, say initially he makes one conceptual drawing, that time structural engineer need to be involved.
yes.
Second thing is that what happens, when architect finishes, say he gives the finishing touches, he says, okay, this seems to be okay, now how about executing this? That time you will come to know almost all the components and everything has been included in that. Okay, that is the time when the data starts flowing towards the structural engineer. What are the sort of loads you have to consider on that? And all these things should not be verbal. There has to be a system. Say like for example, in our organization, we are following a proper system. We document each and everything. What are the things you are asking the architect or the person who is involved in the building. So majority of the times what we have found is that the plan what we get or the footprint what we get from the architect is almost final. Okay. Now that is the time when it comes, we go back to them. We tell them that, sir, fixed base is the best one. Okay. You go for the pin base. Yes, you will have a higher tonnage because fixed base you will have a less tonnage. But by that time he has already made his mind. Sorry to beg to differ. So now this is a condition where structural engineer, of course, we cannot blame structural engineers because directly I'm telling you, no novice structural engineer will immediately start working on that. He will always have a manager to guide. And in our organization, when we take any people, they come with clean slate. We train them how to do the proper designs. That is the time they will understand each and everything. There will be any queries, so they will raise it. Then this is how the data transfer or the information transfer happens between the architect, their concerned consultant. Now comes the next thing is that we already jump to the next one, that is stability certificate and everything. But before that, say whether it is from vendor or from the structural engineer he has designed, who is checking those things? Who is responsible for those designs? Because I'm telling you, say like architect may be having a view on that, but end of the day, the structural stability or it's what you say the serviceability or the strength, whatever that has been designed, it always lies with the structural engineer. But who owns it now? Whether the architect who is driving that what he requires, or the customer who is saying that this building has to be fixed within my tonnage only. In that, the question mark, who owns that? Because you are actually dictating the structural engineer to deviate. Voluntarily, he never does that. That's why there has to be a system in any engineering department that whenever a structural engineer designs, it is always checked by an experienced person. When you don't follow all this, you bypass all these systems, definitely we are entering into a danger zone. This is what I want to say.
Right. How about inefficiency of a structural engineer? This will be a question in minds of all architects. I will ask you that. How about inefficiency of a structural engineer? If he is over designing it and spending steel, who is paying for that?
So that's what.
And how do you account for those inaccuracies?
Yes, that's what happens. I told you, every organization is having they should have a system, okay, to check. They check and cross check and say from customer side or the client side, if they have got a structural engineer, so for proof checking, they need to interact. It's not final. So they need to interact. But if you are giving it to a vendor, so that vendor, they don't have the system, they don't have a checker. So directly they submit. It is having the tonnage is higher. Then comes the problem. So this is one. Second thing, nowadays I don't find such high tonnage and everything is happening. Now what happens, people are going for this mixing of codes. That is where we are having a question. We are always on the low tonnage. The person who does this and submits first his quotations or bids to the customer, it is always becomes a datum or the reference point for the other people. Then you are trying to squeeze within that. Now the question comes, this higher tonnage and all such issues.
No. What I am saying is, suppose same data is given to 5 vendors. Same data. He is writing one specification. That specification is shared with 5 people. Okay. All 5 of them have designed it. 3 of them were inefficient. I am specifically saying those engineers who worked on that project were not so experienced or were not so efficient engineers. So they could not produce lower tonnage. Now, in order to reduce tonnage, they are taking those discounts of mixing code, which is wrong. It was your inefficiency which resulted that, but now you want to use something else to reduce that tonnage. How do you stabilize this? How do you address this situation?
I'll answer that for you, sir. That is very true. If you give the same case study to 5 designers, all 5 will come up with slightly different results.
Not slightly different results.
Some of them could be very, very different.
It will vary by 40% or maybe 50%.
Yes, true.
Right.
Now, this question of the efficiency of the person designing it or the design engineers, I think that is a question that is relevant for the other industries too. I mean, even
Everywhere.
in the civil design,
Everywhere, exactly.
a structural engineer could be designing one beam very differently with very different reinforcements and cement,
Yes.
etc. And this is very common for both. But I think in the sectors, in our sector, in PEB sector, designers need to have a certain amount of experience. I mean, I give an example to a lot of people, to our clients, that even if you have to go for, let's say, heart surgery, you'll not go to a new doctor who's hardly done 2 or 3 or 4 surgeries.
That's
You'll go
true.
to a doctor who's had 1,000, 5,000 surgeries, has 20, 30 years of experience, because he's learned from his mistakes, right? So similarly, when you're getting a building made, a project set up, you must try and give weightage to an experienced company, an experienced designer, and not necessarily, I think it's so much from the client side that they start giving weightage to the experienced people who've had 100, 200, 500 successful examples, and give their experience a certain amount of weightage. You can't say, nahi, aapka to tonnage 500 hai, somebody else is doing it in 450 tons. So if you reduce it, then you're efficient. If you can't, right? So these are the questions that are right now being addressed in the market. So experienced designers, plus, as he said, proof checking, peer reviews are very, very critical, especially for slightly complicated structures where the loads are critical. I think that is a very, very important step that should not be missed under any circumstances. And whether the designer or the manufacturer, the bidder, should not be unnecessarily put under the pressure of reducing the tonnage, hence becoming L1, hence winning the bid. Because invariably it's that, putting the cart in front of the horse. So we are in a way governed. The consultant sometimes will tell us, boss, this is the project. As per us, the tonnage should be 1,000 tons. Now we are trying to work it out, and we say, sorry, we can't do it in 1150 tons to 1200 tons. We can't work it in 1,000 tons. Now we will be told, no, you can't do it, but we've already got bids of nearly 1,000 tons. Now we suddenly start wondering. I said, yeah, have we made any mistake? Should we start using other methods? And this is what happens. So an experienced professional company will probably say, no, this is what we can do. This is the best.
Right.
We've done the proof checking. Can't reduce it any further.
That's how it should be.
Yeah.
That's how it should be. And see, one thing which I differ on your viewpoint is give it to a big company which has 300 engineers, which has experienced structural engineers, so you are assured of getting quality.
So not necessarily a big company, I meant. A setup which has experience and a certain legacy behind them, which matters.
You may have that. You may have that. But are you involving those people in making those estimates? I doubt.
One more aspect. I mean, see, in general, all entire industry is facing manpower crunch, in my opinion, and it is practically not possible to deploy your most experienced engineers on every inquiry.
Agreed.
So
that's what
this is also one aspect
possible.
why you see some of the tonnages are maybe 40% higher.
Yes.
This could be also one of the possible reasons for that, actually. Practical reason, I would say.
Right.
Yeah, but in that case, what we at least try and follow is there are certain buildings, as I call, as box buildings, very repetitive, simple, small span buildings, easier designs. But then there are certain very critical buildings, where there are heavy mezzanines, large spans, heavy loads, crane loads, there could be suspended loads, there could be overhangs, etc. And that is where you need extra attention of your best designers and probably a team together which can cross-check and not be put under the stress कि ये 2 दिन में design पूरा करना है, कल रात को submit करना है.
Yes.
Cannot happen. This is engineering and must be given its due weightage and due importance. It is not just a sketch you can just draw, give it to and then change it later, right? Because that becomes the gospel. You quote on certain tonnage, even the promoter will not allow, because then 200 ton की गलती कर दी, can I increase it by 100 ton? You finished.
नहीं हो सकता.
Can't do that.
Right.
See, one of the, sorry, just one sentence.
Yeah, no issues.
One of the things why, PEB has been able to give a consistently very economical designs to the clients is the element of competition. Okay. But I think if we overdo it, it is going to be
Yes.
completely
we are facing problems
destroy the thing
when you try
completely.
to overdo that. You were trying to say
Yeah.
something.
So addressing his concerns, I agree that there are many times lacunas in the RFQs. So the RFQs have to be very precise of what we want, what the client wants, and address all these issues so that it is not left to the open to interpretation of the individual PB vendors.
Yes.
So once that is addressed, the designs which come in are fairly accurate. And we also, from our part, have to check and see what tonnage we are getting. Is it in the range? Sometimes it's the other way, that the tonnage comes very less, and then you have to point out that you might have made some mistake. This is not in what is expected. So the consultants on their part have to be thorough with this.
See, what I feel over here is, first of all, approaching the right structural consultant is very important. Who has the right knowledge about structural steel design buildings. Unlike RCC buildings, I would say, being in the industry for so long, about 90-95% of the structural consultants are very well versed in RCC, but only 5 to 10% are very good in steel buildings. So, as a present in my organization, what I do is, whenever I see that there is a complex building profile, big spans, 50 meters, heavy mezzanines, big mezzanines, heavy crane loads, we make it a point that we go to a structural consultant who has very good knowledge on steel buildings. Unfortunately, what happens is, for pre-engineered building, what happens is we release the tender documents to 5-6 vendors, and then we try to get information from those vendors. Client is always hard-pressed on timelines, and he says that within the next 1 week or 10 days, I want the tender document submitted. That leaves a gap wherein the engineering designers who are working with the pre-engineer guys will not have the time to understand the building in its totality. What we have been doing over the past 3 months is being asked to you to be done in 4 or 5 days or 6 days. I think that's the crux of what Amit was mentioning, that when you release the tender document to 5 vendors or 5 people, not necessarily that the best of the minds are working on it, and even if the best of the minds are working, the interpretation and the design context is being rightly addressed.
So right understanding in the beginning is foremost requirement. There's no compromising on that, number one. Number two, once you have all the information and once you know that yes, now I have all information to the required detail, then putting right resources to work on those designs will, I think, give a good result.
But I have another point, Amit. Prototype buildings.
Yes.
Run-of-a-mill project. Even for those projects, we get tonnages which varies to 40% or 50%. And when an architect opens the bid and he understands that the variation is so big, why can't the pre-engineered building suppliers
review this?
Is the question. Yes. And then that context of uncertainty comes into the picture with the client, that whether the architect is saying is right, or whether the structural consultant is right, or the PEB contractor
is right. Correct.
And then that rat race of L1 comes into picture.
No, and in all probability, because PEB marketing people will be very good in marketing, they will take away that, and no sir, ye yahan par hi galat tha. Those kind of things. So we need to be more accurate when whenever you are submitting the bids, or when it goes to review for somebody. Right? I'm taking few questions in between, though not exactly in connection with what we are discussing. One question is, can the structural designers or PEB manufacturer also provide an SOP or proper erection methodology statement to monitor on site to avoid failures due to procedure?
I wish they could. Unfortunately, a lot of the structural engineers, most structural engineers and designers do not even have a thorough knowledge of the fabrication processes. So they might be very good structural designers who've spent 20 years designing buildings, and they know about the codes, and if you ask them, they can give you the tonnages and all very accurately. But that's all theoretical. How many of them have actually spent hours on the shop floor understanding the fabrication limitations? I've had designs come to us, they've made a section, jisme 100 welding ho hi nahi sakti. You cannot use SAW in those sections, right? They don't understand that there is a minimum throat or a depth required for a certain, right? So the question was
the question is about erection.
Erection for that matter. So I'm saying they don't even understand the fabrication details, and for them to know the erection details is a further far cry, I'm saying.
Yeah.
Right? So they certainly can, provided they can start knowing things about it. I'll be more than happy if our structural engineers, other structural engineers for project, they come to the site and spend weeks there. You cannot come to the site for half an hour, look at it from a distance.
Why don't you send your designers to the site?
Our designers are well versed, but our design.
Right, so can your designer issue SOP or erection statement?
Our designers are well versed, so are our processes, and so is the material sent in sequence and erection SOPs and all safety protocols are all set. Right. But I'm saying when the design is outsourced or coming from a consultant and architect's point of view or a designer's point of view, a lot of those people don't understand. You know, we've been asked to install the middle part of the building first, because that's where they want to have the trenches and the machines. They don't even care for us to start from the gable ends.
Yeah, I will differ a bit with him. See, most of the, if you see, as you say, mature industry, now it is not a new industry at all.
Yes.
And wherever we work, most of the projects or suppliers, they have a SOP, may not be a tune of refine. See, if I work with a PEB supplier, we will have certain policy. Erection policy also goes with more with the safety of a company. Right. If I have a elaborate safety requirements, I will definitely make a point that whatever policy comes to me from the vendor, I will update it to need of me as well as my end client.
Right.
So most of them have it, like whosoever has the question, but yes, it could get refined with each project, uniqueness of it.
So structural engineers, PEB manufacturer.
PEB suppliers, all the reputed PEB suppliers have their set protocols and SOPs for sure. And we're very happy to come and discuss with you anytime. Any questions on that?
So right way of doing this, probably in my view, in my opinion, would be PEB vendor issuing erection SOP and erection sequence and methodology, and structural engineers should be approving that yes, my design is okay if you erect in the sequence.
I just want to add one thing.
Just one second. This is generally by and large on all established players should be having that, because without that any escape is not possible. For example, when you send your material to site, for example, what do you send first? You send the braced bay material first. That is what SOP says.
Yes.
So you first define the blocks. This is my block, and in this block, this is my braced bay. You start from there. So that is how it starts. So in a way, it is, I think, enshrined in the SOPs of all companies, and this is the way the material is being supplied to site. This is the way it is being erected. So generic guidelines to say that they are not available may not be correct. Those guidelines are very much there.
No, they are there. They are definitely there. What is required is probably, number one, whether they are checked and approved by design department of that company, yes or no. If yes, is it also checked and approved by consulting engineer or consulting architect who is reviewing it? They want it in certain fashion. They may not allow you to erect a line of column for a few days. So is your SOP or your structural, the erection sequence in sync with requirement of the project or not?
Yeah. Here I want to add, actually, this is being decided before production. How, how we say, like, for example, there is 1,000 ton PEB. So it is having, say, like some 25, 30 grids. So that time, the customer always mentions that from which sequence he wants it. That is the case, when that is the time, what will happen? A PEB well-established organization. Here I want to say first about the SOP. Yes, well-established organization having different divisions. They always having these SOPs printed, and these are being even submitted to the architect and the customer also. Right. So like for in my organization, we have got separate execution team, we have got a separate project management team, and sitting together, they already finalized how exactly the sequence should be. Now the customer says that either he wants to proceed from left to right or right to left. That is the time what happens, our project management team doesn't go for production immediately for those 1,000 tons in one go. It is always in phases. How these phases? First we need to see the stability of the structure during erection. So what he said is, accordingly, it starts from the braced bay. So accordingly, the phases are split. It is not that, say, I want to start in the middle, there you don't have a braced bay. It is unstable. But in such conditions also, if there are in one or two few cases, it happens. That time, what are the precautions you are supposed to take at the site, construction site? You need to hold them. with temporary supports. All those thoughts should go into this. Otherwise, then we end up discussing all this like this.
What is most dangerous and recent times failures what has been seen in the industry is incomplete seeking. Okay, you have done the seeking, okay, because you design the building for a particular condition. And say for example, you have done a seeking on 3 sides, complete, and the cyclone comes. And it has got a really compounding effect because the building has got nowhere to escape. And it throws very odd type of loading, which is probably beyond even understanding of any design engineer, structural engineer. So in these situations, we need to be, again, very careful. Again, there are generic guidelines are available. Like you cannot keep everything closed. You have to have some wing out for the wing if it comes. If there is a possibility of cyclones, etc., you have to have some additional guy ropes, etc., for additional safety. These generic guidelines are there. It's not that it is not there. It's application of this meticulously at every given site, which is very important actually.
Yeah, I will just add to his point. See, one of the project, I think it was kept on hold for certain reasons.
Yes.
And in between, right, we have finished sheeting and no cladding. But then we have to make my client aware that this, if you keep like this is not designed as an open structure. This is designed as a closed structure.
Yes.
So we have to make them aware that if you keep it open like this,
You are
anything
living
can happen. It was a very structure next to a residential area as well as to a public area. So ultimately we met them, then again we have started the work to make it a complete safe structure, to be precise.
Right, so we as a whole we should keep them informed that look, we are following unsafe practices. This may not be safe. You are trying to do this, but it's not right thing to do. You can wait for maybe a week or so with calculated risk.
How technology is really helping us in many ways, right? In our company, somebody done it knowingly, unknowingly, without thinking, but we have got for each project, there is a WhatsApp group and they share the photographs of the structure. And usually the detailers or people like me will circle some areas. What about this? There is no column here. Why there is no bracing here? So this is what it's helping nowadays. Things are getting better.
Yeah. Next question, I'll have to quickly take that. We have many questions and I think people are participating very actively. The next one is, for steel buildings, can we as a fraternity agree that the structural integrity of PEB building or steel building must be checked by structural designers before giving structural stability certificate of the building? This is, I think whoever has written is a very, very valid and very important question. Majority of the PEB sites, structural engineer has never visited and he is writing stability certificate. That's very dangerous practice. That's very, very dangerous practice. You never know if they have not installed some of the important components, you cannot find out. If something is missed out in totality, it was missing at the time of detailing work. You approved structural GA drawings, there are separate set of drawing. There's another set of drawing which is made for manufacturing. The manufacturing drawing itself was never produced. So that component is not supplied, not erected, nothing is done with that. How do you account for that? The structural engineer must visit, in my opinion, to every site before giving certificate.
For that, say what happens, yes, PEB structure has got thousands of components.
Yes.
Okay. So for each component, a drawing has to be generated. So that is normally because for
Yes.
shop point of view and everything, it is gets generated. Once it is installed, okay, see, designer has done his duty. He completed the designs and all. When it gets executed, see, executing on drawing and executing at site is entirely different,
Yes.
concept. When it is on drawing, it looks in a small screen, like on paper. But when you actually execute at site, it entirely looks different. Now comes for stability point of view. How you check it? There has to be a structural audit. For that, every organization should have a separate independent audit team. So like in our organization, you have got 8 audit people. Each and every job gets checked. Unless they don't certify, we have got again 2 systems. One, we give the design warranty and we give the structural stability. Both are different. One is design point of view. Yes, whether the structural engineer or the design engineer consider all the aspects or not, he has to write on the paper, on the certificate, it needs to be submitted to the customer. Second is that whether the execution department have done as per what has been produced on the drawing, and audit. Finally, when they give the stability certificate, audit report has to be always attached with that. These things, when you follow this systematically, then only we can ensure that, yes, this has been audited properly. Otherwise, the designer, what you said is right. He will write a certificate, just like, say, like, like earlier in our initial employment, we used to say that I want today a leave. So the best thing is that I have to fall sick. Yeah. Then I fall sick, I go to an ordinary doctor, I say, please, sir, give me one certificate I need to submit.
So unless, sorry interrupting sir, so unless all the aspects of the final execution are also vetted and checked, for example, if the nut bolts have been tightened properly, even the washers, very small component, yes. Has the washer been used, right? Yeah. Now, unless the structural engineer or the architect, the consultants, they have a whole setup or an agency, a specialized agency who can genuinely go and check all these aspects at an early stage, check the welding, first check the designs, then check the welding, check the fabrication, then check the little aspects of installation, tightening of the bolts, alignment, etc., etc. Unless all that is done, a stability certificate is just a piece of paper to keep in the drawer or maybe show it to the authorities, right? Then it's more or less trust. Doing it. So that's the only way to actually do it thoroughly. That's the only way. And unfortunately, most structural engineers, architects, consultants right now don't have the setup for that. That's the part. So they rely on the contractor or the PEB manufacturers to give them. So we issue them certificates. We give them our inspection reports. They are mostly taken as done, as gospel, and mostly accepted.
Yeah, I'll go with more in not just visiting structural engineer. See, his activity starts from, say, one STAD.
Yes.
Then there's a activity process for fabrication, is a QAP. Which has to be approved by him. Third, again, the erection, whatever procedure, SOP, you figure it out. As you mentioned about brace base, that has to be mentioned there. Okay, you have a grid. And whole process, when you start fabrication, involve your structural engineer to the factory.
Yes.
When you start erection, involve him. So it's not just visiting afterward, because
this is what legal authorities are expecting. This is what they are expecting, that unless until it is seen by those people, the person who has designed has never seen the structure. Person who is writing certificate doesn't know anything about it. That's serious.
But so that is where the PEB industry is involved to a very efficient level, because our structural engineers are very closely attached to the shop floor, to the fabrication. So they are practically very closely coordinating on daily basis on the fabrication aspects, and also attached to the installation team very closely. Some of them are visiting the installation sites frequently. So at least I can say from the evolved PEB players, I think we are following the protocol to the extent possible.
With Amit's thing, like he will talk about welding on both sides of flanges. Yes. If you don't have mention in the QAP, and if he comes to site and he sees a column, where is the welding on the site? Correct. Because the whole process he is not involved, or he has refused to get involved. Correct. Whatever. So it ultimately the product will be...
Product is suffering. See, in communication gap, ultimately building is suffering. So structural engineer or consultant probably has seen structural GA drawings. Okay. So far so good. That is thoroughly checked. Everything is okay there. From there you make second set of drawing, which are workshop drawings or fabrication drawings, detailed drawings. There is no connect between this and this.
Amitji, I have a question for you. You are doing so many projects, sometimes multiple projects parallelly.
Yes.
Do you, for example, you guys have the setup to go through the details of everything? Can you visit our plants that many times? Can you actually visit the sites that many times? Can you check on these details?
Not one person needs to do that. I am not saying that. What is required is, for example, when you are doing it, if it is design built by PEB vendor, right. You have your team, right? You have your structural engineer who has designed the building. Correct. He can check that.
Of course.
Right? He can check that. As long as you have that process, no problem. In my experience with many PEB vendors says that they don't have that process. Structural GA approved, design department is out. Now detailing department takes over.
No, that is another problem. A lot of companies have designers and detailers separate.
Detailers separate, exactly.
Which, at least I can say from Cold Steel, our designers are our detailers. जो design करते हैं, वही detailing करते हैं, वही shop drawings issue करते हैं, for the fabrication, and they are the one coordinating till the last stage.
And most important part, why structural engineers visit is required towards end of the project is he is not going to check each nut and bolt, definitely not required. But structural engineers, the consultant, whoever is designed, he has an eye. He knows that these are important components. Have you installed them? Are those components in place or not? If he sees that no, what you have done is unacceptable, he will tell you. There are cases where even I have myself seen, I will ask site in charge to send me plumb. Have you checked plumb of all columns? He will send me nicely documented paper that, sir, I have checked, it is within 5 millimeter, which is okay, this is signed, okay. When I go to site, ask him to measure, it has come to 75 millimeter. So this kind of thing happens. One visit of a structural engineer who has designed the building, one visit will definitely help in ensuring better quality.
I think what we are seeing in some of the good projects nowadays, that there is a separate survey team, a specialized survey team always deployed at site, which is a completely independent team, and they will continue to check the plumb and levels and alignments and some of the other issues, right from the foundation to the column to the rafters. And that is again a good idea to have you. That's a completely independent team and can give you the readings on the spot very accurately. So you can't have 5 ka 75 mm, 5 cannot become 75.
I have to quickly go through this.
Yes, quickly.
Next question is, if people are mixing codes without taking balancing factor, what will be impact on stability of this building? Building will be unsafe. I am not taking anybody's view here. If something happens to structure, who will be responsible, designer or PEB manufacturer? Whoever's design is executed should be held responsible, I understand. If you agree or if you have any other views on that?
I think the person who's fabricated and installed the building has to take the responsibility. I can put my hand up and say the PEB manufacturers, if we've designed and installed the building, we will take the responsibility for it till the last day for sure. We cannot go back to the designer or consultant said, we had somebody done the design, they've checked it, so it's not our responsibility. Sorry, we have to stand responsible for it.
Yeah, here I want to beg to differ. Suppose from customer side, the data itself is wrong in that time?
Yeah, then it is our responsibility to first check the design before we fabricate and install something. I will not fabricate and install something blindly because I've got the design, so I can't do that. If I'm convinced that the designs are accurate, correct, I can go ahead, fabricate. Otherwise, if I see some error in that, some mistake, we will always go back to the designer and say, this is what is wrong, we must correct it, right? There can always be So ultimately, if I make it and install it, ultimately I have to be responsible.
So that means to say now what has happened, say you are having a tender, okay, in tender all the specifications have been mentioned. Nowadays even consultants or even the architects are mentioning that these are the load combinations you are supposed to follow. Now here comes, that's what I started with mixing of codes, okay. Here they say that you take loads as per Indian code and mix it with American code, design as per American code. Now American code as per when you design, when you mix these codes, it is already under design with 40%. Now designer says that, the tender says that I have to follow this. I designed it. Now the building is in danger. Then who is liable for that? The person who specified those specifications or the person who designed it?
I'll tell you.
Stability certificate.
Take objection at the beginning. Don't quote for such wrong specifications. Tell architect, tell owner that, sir, this specification has error. If you want, please correct it. If you don't correct it, I will write in my stability certificate that building is designed for this on your instruction. So I will write that in my certificate, and building will stand only if this condition withstand. Anything beyond that, building will be unsafe.
I am customer, I refuse your conditional stability or conditional design warranty. That
I am saying that. I
don't accept that. I ask you.
Fine, I'll not design, I'll not take that project. I am happy not to get involved with that.
Correct. So
because
right
you are getting involved with a building which is sure of failing.
See, stability certificate is not unconditional. It is conditional upon loads being followed, whatever has been given. Second thing is that proper maintenance also being carried out.
Yes.
This is also another aspect of
it is part of stability certificate.
See, we have not seen issues to the extent of failure of building, but certain minor issues keep on coming because of client changing the loads. Typically happens in case of cranes. I mean, we have seen one of the projects, the design is only for one single 5-ton crane. Actually, you go to site, there was a complaint, there is everywhere there is a vibration. Please come and see. And actually, there are 3 cranes running. So this is a, I mean, our stability certificate is not valid in that case.
It's not safe. The building is not safe. You can immediately issue notice saying that, sir, this is not safe. It's up to you now. My certificate is null and void. That's it.
Here I want to add, when you have taken this crane subject, okay? So yes, manufacturer. See what is happening is also here also, during initial design stage or estimation stage, it so happens the customer must not have actually finalized the crane vendor or crane manufacturer. So at that time what they say, they ask us to assume, okay, you assume an XYZ and take the loads and proceed. In that also there are class of cranes. Okay, now when you go to A class or B class, okay, it doesn't require any crane fatigue test. Okay, and today unfortunately I'm telling you the softwares what you are using like the Bentley Stat and everything, all such tools, they don't have fatigue test in cranes. Right. Okay, so we have our own in-house software. Now when it comes to say, suppose initially he says during estimation stage you go with class A or class B, I submitted, it accepted. Now comes the customer goes for class C. Already building has been erected. Now what will happen? The crane, this is not been designed for fatigue, because when you design for fatigue, the crane weight itself goes up by around 28 to 30%. So this is where I'm telling you, say people cut corners. Now what happened? Now it is class C or class D. Okay? Now that time all such issues come. Then who is liable? Because first of all, today we have forgotten manual calculations and all those things. You are completely dependent on the commercial software, third-party software. Okay? So now you insist some people, say today the students, the type of students, graduates we are getting, you ask them to do manual calculation, they say that, okay sir, forget it, is better to go to IT industry. Nobody will chase us. Now in that condition, they're depending on this commercial software, and the commercial software earlier were good, and nowadays what happens, as the revision comes, as the updates are coming, what we have found is that they themselves don't know that such tests need to be carried out. I've prepared one PPT last after this completion, I'll just show it for 2 minutes. So there are so many such factors. So in that condition, okay, here comes. Now it has been not been tested for fatigue. Now customer gone for class C type of crane. Now building is vibrating, it's unsafe. Question mark.
Issue certificate. Tell them that the building was designed for this. You are using this, which is unsafe. You are living dangerously.
I passed my responsibility to, by say like giving this one. But end of the day, say a customer who is looking into that building, he has nothing to say in that, okay, because he has appointed a consultant or something, okay. Right. How about the building? Whether it will do the service for what that he has expected.
If it is not safe, it is not safe. No, it is better you inform him that this is not safe. By not informing, you are damaging it more.
True, true. I think the way to go about it is, for especially, I'm coming to very quickly concluding the crane point, whenever there are heavy cranes involved, anything beyond 10 tons or higher, we always try and insist to get the crane data at least before the final design is done. Maybe you may not have the crane data at the initial tender stage, but we insist on getting the full crane data from the supplier or the contractor.
Quickly wrap it up.
Next question.
Just 2 seconds. 2 seconds, okay? So that's what is happening, that you must always have a data or base of C and D class. Accordingly, you have to design it. You should not go below that.
Okay. Next question is, why should architect/consultant be involved in commercial discussions or final negotiations? It's up to customer. They can take a call if they don't want architect/consultant to get involved. They will not get involved.
It depends on the client actually. Many times we are involved only up to the technical negotiation stage. We normalize the building, and after that the commercial is handled by the client's purchase team.
Here I have one point. The request to the clients is always that they should qualify only 3 good quality PEB vendors and don't mix A with C.
Yes.
Then only the responsibility lies
apple
with
to apple comparisons. Yes. Yeah. For L1, cost should not be only criteria. Consultant, quality check if required.
Yeah, this L1 culture has actually done a lot of damage to our industry, our economy, and our whole thing. And a lot of times we try and keep people, don't go for L1, go for B1, go for the best one. You know, of course, nobody wants to pay 50%, 100%, 20%, 30% higher. But even if you end up paying 5, 10, 15% higher on just the PEB part, all the other costs are still remaining the same. Your land costs, machines, working capital, foundation, everything is same. So this L1 culture should go. We'd be more than glad if that goes away.
I'm asking you as a PEB vendor, in your opinion, when consultant or architect tells you that you are not L1, you didn't got project because you are not L1, do you really think it is L1 that has cost you the project? Do you really think so? I don't think project happens that way. For giving you feedback, consultant or architect may be telling you that you are not L1.
So there are two categories of projects, sir, here. One is an evolved customer. An evolved customer who has done many buildings previously will not necessarily go for the L1 at all. He knows what are the problems, he knows what he's trying to achieve, and therefore he'll go for whatever he's more comfortable with, even if he has to pay 20% more. But there is a second category of customers who could be a large client but doing it for the first time. And therefore, L1 could be a criteria for him, seriously. So I think it also depends, it depends on the guidance being given from the consultant.
Yeah, I'll go with more with like this requirement to architect and part. See, there should be a evaluation criteria which you should have marking for technical, should be marking for commercial. What happens is they have 5 people technically qualified, but there is no ranking done. If you say 60% marks are given to technical, and you mix both, take a commercial activities, then you'll get a better kind
I think
of vendor
that's
on
very
board.
good suggestion. Probably all of us can use it. You have certain marks for technical evaluation and rest for the commercial. You add up them and you will get probably right results.
Performance of a company doesn't happen on price.
Yes.
It happens on the other capacities,
Also.
his capabilities,
Yes.
his staff, everything. So that should be more marking than 50% for the technical part of it.
Yes. Next question is to bridge the gap between architect, engineer, contractor, client requirement. I think we should conduct constructability review study before execution of the project. Do you think this will help? I think all architects does that before starting the project, right? Yeah, I think that is done. Next is it okay to use MBMA wind loads instead of IS 875 for buildings in India?
No, we would not recommend that. I don't think anybody on this panel would recommend that at all. I mean, I'm saying it for everybody's behalf.
IS 875 is, as I told, it is at service load. When you go to MBMA nowadays, it doesn't have its own code. It says that you refer to ASC 7. ASC 7 is 2016 is the latest code. They are all ultimate loads. So suppose I use again I'm stressing, if I take my Indian load code and I mix with American code, you are under designing the structure up to 45% in wind load.
So if you want to use wind load from MBMA, which is indirectly ASC 7, please use load combination of the same code. Please use design requirements of the same code. Don't try to mix and match. You will make errors because the design philosophy is completely different from AISC 2016 to AISC 2010 to AISC 2005 and so on, and completely different in Indian standard. Don't try to mix and match, you will definitely make errors.
Also each country's codes, they take into consider, they have certain factor of safeties, considering what is the status of fabrication industry, what is the tolerance. So based on that skill level of the people, erection people, all that it considers, and based on that, I think those codes are most applicable to the situation of that particular country, not any other country. This is the basic premise.
So my request to you, to all the consultants and PEB suppliers is, why don't you write this to the relevant authorities in the country?
You think we are not doing it already?
It has to happen fast because we are losing time. The PEB industry has grown to such an extent. I'll tell you.
So you're right. In a way, it is not the fault of the industry when some of the people have to fall back on other codes, because our codes are little lagging and they're not very clear, and some of the clauses are rather draconian. So we are obliged to follow other codes. It's how it happens.
So some structural consultants have written codes for the RCC. So similarly, why don't you,
take the...
I think the way the industry is evolving, we're not too far from that. I think there's a lot more synergy now and there's a lot more consensus now than there was 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, 15 years ago. I think we are heading in that direction for sure.
Vinayak, I'll tell you, there is a revision of IS 800 which is going on. We will be, hopefully we will be having it very soon, maybe 2023 version of IS 800. But still, all said and done, Indian codes may remain more conservative, definitely more conservative, because level of accuracy is available in manufacturing and construction is different here than what is available in USA. So yeah, you will be on conservative side, you may remain. People are free to use American codes. As far as it is a national code, there should be no problem. The problem comes only when particular insurance agency will say, I don't follow this, I will not accept this. So then customer will have to understand whether to save money here or save money there.
Another challenge here is also good close integration between the software companies and these new codes. A lot of the softwares do not work on the new codes. Some of the new codes don't accept the older softwares. And it is very difficult for a lot of structural engineers to then make a khichdi out of it. That's what it's...
But when we have got a separate code for structural engineering, that is IS 800 2000, it has got all the design combinations also. Then why you want to go to American codes? Why you want to copy some foreign code? Really puzzling. Because already we are having, we in a limit state, okay, in IS 800, we already got the load combinations. But why you want to go to follow the American code? Because there is some vested interest. That's it, I want to say.
Fine. I think time don't permit us to discuss this point. It will take much longer. Maybe we'll have to have another conference to discuss why we want to use AIC. That's all. Thank you so much. It was you all were very engaging. We have a lot of questions. I think I thank all panel members and thank you so much.